And good morning to everyone out there listening. We hope you're having a great day. Welcome to our first podcast. We are the Doobie Twins.
It's ironic because we don't smoke, but we would have in depth conversations. My name is Jasmine,
My name is Ethan.
and we hope you enjoy our podcast. Today's topic will be about broken English. The articles that we'll be using are Mother Tongue by Amy Tang and How to Tame a Wild Tongue by Gloria Asaldua.
We think that broken English is very overlooked. It's one of those things where everyone kind of knows about it, but they just, it's hard to understand about it unless you experienced it yourself. And obviously, a lot of people are related to other people who've been through it. For example, my grandma and my mom came from the Philippines, so they've definitely had to change the way they talk, and they've been through broken English and struggled. And they've always told me these stories, but it's hard for even like me to interpret uh, what they've been through and how they've been treated differently.
Same here. In my experience, my mom came into this country without speaking English at all, just Spanish, and it has been difficult for her. And I've seen it firsthand as well of the treatment that people receive when they don't speak English correctly. I've seen it because I would go with my mom to doctor's appointments or different type of appointments, and they would just overlook at her and make her feel less. And it got to a point where I would have to translate everything to my mom and be her personal translator. And that has also created a barrier between my mom and the person that she wants to communicate. It makes me be the third person, the person in the middle. And it's just something that is unfortunate, and people just assume so many things just based on the way that you talk.
Yeah, which is terrible because not everyone always has that third person to translate. So things, I can only imagine how bad things can get, or how um, they miscommunicate like these big topics, or like going to the doctors and something like really important or really bad is happening, and you're trying to explain it but you just can't, and that's terrifying. We're gonna pull some quotes out of Mother Tongue first from what we sourced in the beginning. They have just a bunch of quotes that kind of explain with what we're trying to say. The first one, Amy Tan said, "It has always bothered me that I can think of no way to describe it other than broken, as if it were damaged and need to be fixed, as if it lacked a certain wholeness and soundness."
Yeah, just and that quote itself describes so many things of the definition of broken. I also wish there was another word to describe broken English, but unfortunately there isn't. And it's just because society has created that idea of, oh, it's broken because it cannot be fixed. That person who is speaking that way cannot be fixed or modified or corrected in a way.
Yeah. And obviously we know this because we have family, and we understand that they're trying their best, and they're like piecing together a completely new language to try and talk to us, because that's what we grew up on, was English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we understand that they struggle, but it's it's almost like we know that they have a wholeness, and they're trying their best, and they're like trying to put out this message sometimes. But then there's just people who don't, they didn't grow up with it, so they don't understand, so they kind of just think it's not whole, and that's kind of scary and kind of sad, because they just don't, they will never understand what they're trying to say, which is why broken English is just a huge barrier that people overlook. And it affects people everywhere. It's not like if they're in your family, it's kind of hard, but when you go out, like you said, to doctors, right? Or for Amy Tan, for example, she wrote that restaurants did not take her seriously did not give her good service, pretended not to hear her, or even acted as if they did not hear her.
Yeah, so not only that in Amy's point of view, but also in How to Tame a Wild Tongue, it says, she Gloria gives out the example of her teacher telling her to speak more American, and it says, if you want to be an American, speak American. If you don't like it, go back to Mexico where you belong. Even that, just her being a young child and having to hear that and having to be like, okay, what language do I choose? Do I choose to speak English? Do I choose to speak Spanish? And later on in her book, she refers to a quote that her mom told her of she needs to speak English in the correct sense of the standard version that you learn at school. Why? Because you'll be able to receive more benefits at work, or people won't look down at you. Instead, they will look up to you, and you'll be the one guiding and being the professional one, which is which is not correct because everyone speaks in a different way. Everyone understands in different ways, and it's our way of communicating. And if we take that away from us, we're just erasing that part of us that creates who we are, indefinitely.
Which is like terrible and scary because like people feel pressured to like have to talk in standard English because like at work or at jobs, or like they standard English is just something that everyone is kind of like pushed to talk about. And people nowadays, like parents with broken English or grandparents with broken English, they're pushing on their children today to just speak straight like standard English, which sucks because like that's your language, right? That's like what you grew up on, and they understand the struggle of broken English and they've already been through it and they don't want you to go through it.
Yeah, and also it's just as we're getting older and as new generations are coming into this world and expanding their education, we realize that other languages like Spanish or dialects from other places are being erased, and little by little they're not being introduced to other people. Why? Because society has created this standard of language ideology of this one language. English is the best language you can possibly speak in. It's the standard. It's the most educated way that you can possibly talk. So it creates this mentality of like, oh, I have to reject that version of myself and I have to put that away so people don't look down at me.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it all stems from broken English, because it starts off as people trying to learn English and they're like trying to convey their thoughts or their feelings, or they're just trying to pull out a message and they just can't. And then that's what scares them. So then more people get pushed to standard English and it becomes the standard, which we think is just terrible because it's your language. You should express it and you should talk to your family in that language, and you should be happy and you should be proud to use it. But it's just so looked down upon that it's just slowly turning to standard English.
Yeah. So it's better to remind ourselves that the way that we speak is not the way that we should be looked down at, or the way that we should be identified as. And it's just better to stay with our standards and our way that we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be proud of that. We shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's create this society that looks up into, okay, let's try to change this. Let's try to change our mentality of how we see other languages, because there's no perfect language out there. Every language has its problems. Every language has their good things and their bad things. So there's no perfect language. So there shouldn't be this standard, or it should be this idea of one is better than the other.
And I think that we have a great like view of this, but it's just so hard because society like puts it on everyone, and it's not something that like we could change per se, or something that like we could just go out and start doing. It's more something that we just have to hope that people start to understand and start to see and start to realize that like their language is important and it's just a part of them. And like I don't want to call it throwing away because they don't really throw it away. They kind of just set it aside to like focus on what America is kind of expecting out of them, which again from our point of view is like terrifying and like hard to understand because I don't think that we've really been through it ourselves.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you learned a little something. Again, my name is Ethan.
My name is Yasmin.
And we hope you guys have fun.